Hi, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to another Monticello live stream. We have a lot of great information for you, and welcome to all of those who are joining us live. And for those who are watching later, we know that there's a lot of great things about engaging students and families here at Monticello that we're going to share with you today. My name is Krystal Gladden. I'm manager of school programs. Colleague Rachel Baum, who's manager of family programs. And we have some really exciting activities for those who are coming and bringing students and bringing families to this space, on top of it being a wonderful season with wonderful weather. And we're so excited to have you all come and engage in all of these activities. So for families who are looking to visit, what do they get with each ticket?
So we have 3 basic types of tickets that you can explore as families. If you're really excited about getting to go inside of the main house at Monticello, you'll want to opt for a guided ticket, and that includes generally exploring the first floor of the house, and then takes you outside as well to all the offerings that we have out of doors. If you'd rather go through the house on a self-guided pace, you can choose for a self-guided tour type. And we've got QR codes in all of the rooms so that you can learn a lot of information using your cell phone. You can also chat with our colleagues and ask questions. And then the third general type of ticket that we have are gardens and grounds passes. And those include all of our wonderful activities outside as well as at our visitor center. So you can plan ahead, take a look at our website, and decide which option is going to be best for you.
Wonderful. And then what tours and activities do you have for families when they're exploring the mountaintop?
So families that are excited about a guided tour, I highly recommend our family-friendly tours. Those will kick off on June 11th, and they run through Labor Day weekend. And then they'll also pick up for some of our holiday weekends and busy weekends in the fall. So our family-friendly tours they're really geared to families with kids who are 5 to 11, and they are a lot of fun. We use a hands-on approach in those tours, so we are pulling out props that families can engage with. For example, I've got a giant nickel here, and maybe you don't realize that you may be walking around with a portrait of Thomas Jefferson in your pocket and also an image of Monticello the house. So you can, when you go home after visiting Monticello, you can tell all your friends that you have stood inside the nickel. Our family-friendly tours really help us learn about daily life at Monticello. We explore stories of the people who lived here, both free and enslaved. And we also focus on Thomas Jefferson's ideas and accomplishments. They are a great opportunity for learning. Another thing that is included in any ticket type is our Mountaintop Activity Center. And that also opens on June 11th, pretty much the same schedule as those family-friendly tours. That's out of doors, and it's really a great opportunity for the whole family. Everyone of all ages, young and young at heart, can enjoy the Mountaintop Activity Center. One activity that we offer is quill pen writing. So you can use a quill pen and copy out some of the famous phrases from the Declaration of Independence, like all men are created equal, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and take some time to really explore what the meaning of those words were originally and also in your life today. So if you've ever wanted to write with a quill pen, this is a great opportunity. We also explore some of Thomas Jefferson's gadgets, like wheel ciphers, which is a type of coding mechanism that Jefferson designed for sending secret messages. So you all can try to crack the code on a wheel cipher. And then we also have mystery objects at the Mountaintop Activity Center to see if you can identify. And these help us to learn about daily life at Monticello and some of Jefferson's interests and accomplishments. And if you're wondering, this is a mastodon tooth. So the tooth of a prehistoric hairy elephant about 10,000 years ago. If you'd rather do some exploring just on your own, out on the grounds, we have a digital scavenger hunt, which is a wonderful way to guide you throughout our site. And that digital scavenger hunt is going to prompt you to do things like snap pictures, find all kinds of interesting objects, share your thoughts on questions, and that's something that, as I said, will allow you to explore on your own. So those are some of the offerings that we have here on the mountaintop at Monticello. And Krystal, I was curious, for students and schools who want to come to Monticello, what do we have available for them?
So of course, if you bring a group of students here, all of the things that Rachel mentioned are also available. Our guides are amazing at connecting the content here on the highlights tours if you decide to get a guided tour ticket. And they'll take you through that first floor of the house and a few stops outside, including the West Lawn and the South Cellar spaces, where they can engage in conversations about the ideas of liberty and democracy, talk about the experience of enslaved people here and the families and communities and the way that they lived and labored here at Monticello. If you decide to sign up for one of our roundabouts, this is a very specific type of tour for students where they are not only able to do that same tour that I just mentioned, but on top of that, you'll spend some extra time with a specific guide going through some of the spaces like the flower garden, the vegetable garden, and exploring some of the other spaces on Mulberry Row, which was the sort of industrial space where a lot of enslaved people lived and did a lot of work like making nails and working in the textile workshop, and get a little more in depth in those conversations about, again, those meanings of democracy, the words that Thomas Jefferson wrote in the Declaration of Independence, talking about the legacies of those words, and also talking about the legacies of the families and the legacies of freedom that stemmed from their time here at Monticello. And we'll be able to make sure that we're connecting that content to what they're learning back in the classroom, because we always want to be a resource to all of our friends and educators in the community. And we're also able to ground that information and have them explore a little more of the footprint of the mountaintop here, and still helping them understand that this is really a small portion of the property that belonged to Thomas Jefferson, where some of these families would have engaged in this space and done different type of work. Some of them able to socialize because they weren't necessarily part of the enslaved community, and talk about some of the other people that maybe guides wouldn't get a chance to talk about in that 45-minute highlights tour. We like to go with inquiry-based learning, so we always like to connect to sources. So we'll talk to students about how we know some of the things that we know about some of the oral histories here, things like our Getting Word Oral History project that we have. We'll show pictures so students can see some of the things that we're talking about. And of course, one of the best pieces of history, one of the great primary sources that we have, is the physical site itself. So we'll use that power of place and talk through some things and show them the actual objects, show them these physical spaces, and then use our words in the storytelling and the narratives of the lives of the people here to help populate those stories, populate that space with our words, and help students really understand what life was like and how complex it was, and the very different ways that people engaged with this space, which really ties to the very different ways that a lot of people now feel about this space. Some of it will be really entertaining, some of it is very inspiring, and some of it is extremely challenging. So those extended programs really allow those guides to answer those questions that students have and allow them a little more time to process what can be some very complex information. But our guides do a great job of really connecting it to where students are educationally, developmentally, and then of course appealing to their own interests, because students get very excited about coming for on-site tours to this space. And if you don't have students who are able to make it on site in person, we do also have some great virtual options. So we have our live virtual tours that operate in a very similar manner. So you have actually two guides, one who's operating a camera, and the conversation feels very similar to the conversation we're having now, and another guide that would be in front of the camera, talking to students live and in real time, showing them those spaces, showing them the first floor of the house, showing them parts of Mulberry Row and parts of the South Cellar spaces and the West Lawn, so they can still get that nickel view of Monticello. And you'll still be able to answer questions. Students can either answer them verbally or they can put them in the chat. Or if you decide to do an electronic field trip, we have some amazing images that are in sort of a PowerPoint. We have online resources where you can do a great virtual 360 of Monticello and parts of the property. And a guide is still going to be there engaging with you and with the students, answering questions and talking through those very complex concepts and showing them some really wonderful up-close pictures of some really cool things that exist in this space, in the house and on the property as well. Now, Rachel, do we have space for kids and family to explore at the visitor center here in Monticello?
Yeah, we sure do. So there's a number of things that families can really enjoy and students can enjoy at the visitor center. Krystal and I have been working hard on redeveloping our Griffin Discovery Room, which will be opening in mid-June. We're so excited to share that with everyone. The Griffin Discovery Room will be a place that students and children can take on some of the roles of history professionals who work here at Monticello. So they can pretend to be archaeologists and try out some of the work that archaeologists do. They can be oral historians and interview each other and their elders to learn about their friends and families' lives and stories. They'll have a chance to do some building at a block table, kind of exploring the work that our restoration historians do and exploring some of the designs that people have used at buildings here at Monticello, but also really activating their own imagination and creativity and building structures that are like nothing before, that the people from the future can learn about our lives today by looking at those buildings that they design. And they'll also have a chance to explore the Declaration of Independence and other primary documents and craft their own declaration. So we're super excited to welcome folks to the Discovery Room real soon. There's also some other fun things to do at the visitor center. If you'd like, you can take a hike down our trail. It goes all the way down to the bottom of the mountain. So it's a 2.25 mile trail one way, but a lot of our families will choose just to explore the boardwalk that's near our visitor center. It's a gorgeous walk through the woods and kind of soak in the natural world around you and get some of the wiggles out. We also have a really nice shop as well that's got a great area of children's activities and books, which allow you to take home a little bit of Monticello with you and extend your learning when you get home. So Krystal, we know that school is wrapping up really soon, and
Yes.
What great activities do we have for students and families while school is out?
Well, I know we've talked a lot about what the student experience was like here, but we also have an experience for our teachers, because we know that you all need a little time outside of the classroom to go and dive deeper into your topics, learn more information that you can share with your students, get some inspiration and spark some ideas for the next school year. So one of the things that I highly encourage for our educators out there is to apply to our Monticello Teachers Institute. This is a great opportunity to come for about 6 days in the summer. We usually do this in July, and you'll be able to come on site for what is essentially a 1-week intensive, diving deep into all of the topics that I mentioned. A lot of this information you'll be able to share with your students, but we'll have you not only talk to our guides and take tours here, including our highlights tour, but also take some of our specialty tours that many of your students can actually come and take whenever they're here as well. So with the tickets that are offered, included with all of the ticket types that Rachel mentioned earlier, you can also go on our Slavery at Monticello tour, which explicitly focuses on the experience of the enslaved community, going through and stopping in different select spaces down on Mulberry Row. And this is a great time for our teachers who come for MTI and students who they may bring later to dive into conversations about individual people who lived and labored here. Stories like Edith Fawcett, who was one of the enslaved cooks here, who created some of those delicious and delectable dishes that many people who were visiting and dining at Monticello would write about, saying the food was both half French, half Virginian, all in good taste and abundance, and talk about that blend and that concept of creating those dishes, of utilizing that complex style of French culinary skill, which we know has a lot of pastries and cream dishes and cream sauces. If you're a big fan of macaroni and cheese like I am, you really enjoy sharing this narrative. But people like Edith Fawcett and James Hemings and Peter Hemings and Ursula Granger are going to do a lot of the work here creating those foods. And they're going to blend it with skills that have been passed down from one generation to another, and then mixing that with the unique flora and fauna, fruits and vegetables and herbs that are being grown here at Monticello, which means it's going to taste a little bit different than somebody who may have eaten in France before, and it's going to create something that is holistically new and unique. But you're also going to mix that with the complexity of, for people like Edith Fawcett to learn this skill, she has to go to the White House as a teenager, be separated from her family and separated from her husband, and didn't necessarily have any say or any choice in how that was going to happen. So you have these very complex stories that the evidence of it, even in the food and how people who would write letters and document their experiences wrote about the food, but we still want to know who's actually creating this moment that others have held in such high regard. So as educators, you get to come on site and you get to dive into the documents and the resources, see what evidence of the enslaved community and their lives and experiences are left behind, some of it in their own words from some of the oral histories that we have from some individuals who were enslaved here at Monticello. You can also take tours with our colleagues who do garden tours and learn about the seeds, the herbs, the layout of the garden, what's grown here in the vegetable garden, the foods that are here that are feeding those who are living in the house and living on the property of Monticello, how many of the families, including enslaved families, would have to supplement their own rations that they were given by growing some of their own small gardens, and the work that they were doing to create things that were new and unique, because we know people like Thomas Jefferson held the concept of agriculture in high regard and sort of perceived himself as a farmer of sorts, and we refer to him frequently as a gentleman planter. But then we can also talk about people like Wormley Hughes, who had a huge role in creating and cultivating a lot of those spaces. We also want to make sure that we're giving our educators during MTI an opportunity to learn from many of our scholars here. So a lot of our colleagues who are here at the library or the International Center for Jeffersonian Studies will come and talk about their specialties, some of the papers that they've edited, any specific research that they've been doing, and they'll tie a lot of those civics-based concepts and to what the teachers are teaching students. And every teacher is supposed to pick a research topic. So any of the topics that are available from our resources here that relate to Monticello or any of the people who lived and labored here, you can pick a project, and it could be something digital like a podcast or a video, or you can create a set of resources like a packet that has primary documents and resources where you can create some context to give to other educators who may not be as steeped in the information as you are, and then create questions that students of different ages and different grade levels can use to create conversation, to use those actual pieces of history to learn about and flesh out all of the perspectives of this moment in time. So I highly recommend for any of our educators who are interested to please think about applying to the Monticello Teacher Institute. And you'll also see me there if you get a chance to come. And then what about for some of the kids in the community? What do we have during the summer, Rachel?
Oh, yeah, thanks for asking. So we offer a summer camp here at Monticello. It's a week-long day camp that is a half day, so it runs in the morning from 8:30 to noon. And this is just such a fabulous opportunity for children to take a deep dive into the history here at Monticello. So they get to hang out with our archaeologists. They go out in the field, hike out into the woods, and get to screen for artifacts. Then they head to the archaeology lab and do things like washing artifacts and learning about what it is that our archaeology department has found. We also spend time with our gardeners, saving seeds for flowers that the campers get to take home and plant in their own gardens if they want. We do things like make Thomas Jefferson's famous vanilla ice cream recipe and get to eat it, which is always a huge hit for everybody. And we do a little bit more behind the scenes exploration of the main house. So our campers get to go upstairs and see spaces that most of our guests don't get to see, as well as explore the mountaintop in much more detail. So it's a wonderful opportunity for children who are really interested in history and love to be outside and explore. And I was hoping maybe to share a few tips with families who are visiting.
Yes.
On what can help to make their visit more successful, easier, more fun. We've actually chatted with families who have visited with us before, and so these tips come straight from other families. And one of the things that families have shared with us is to definitely spend some time on our website ahead of time and really check out what we have to offer and kind of plan your day ahead of time. And we really recommend buying your tickets online ahead of time too, if you can. That way you can take full advantage of what we've got and what seems like the best fit for your family. A lot of families tell us, oh my gosh, I was so surprised. I didn't know there was so much to do. And we wish we'd budgeted more time at Monticello.
And like Rachel mentioned with the ticket types earlier, and you've heard us mention throughout this live stream, there's a lot of stuff that you get to do with any of the tickets that you purchase. But a lot of it, because of the landscape and really wanting to embrace the landscape here at Monticello and learning about this plantation home, means that you're going to be outside. So we highly suggest making sure that everybody in your group is in very comfortable, sturdy shoes. We are, with Monticello being Old Italian for Little Mountain, we are on a little mountain, which means there's gonna be some elevation. There's gonna be some changes to the type of walkways that you're gonna be on. So we highly recommend at any of the points that you plan to explore, any of the spaces that you are here at Monticello, even at the visitor center, comfortable shoes are definitely a must, because we want you to have every opportunity to comfortably explore throughout all of those spaces. And along with that comfort means bringing some things for the weather, because we know the weather can be very unpredictable, especially if you include that concept of elevation. And there's only so many of those things that we can control. So make sure that you're dressing comfortably, that you have comfortable shoes, and that you bring some things should, a nice little rainstorm that's here, watering all of the flowers and all the plants tend to pop up during your visit here. And those things don't necessarily stop the operation. So we're still going to have the tours. We're still going to have spaces open, even if we do get a little bit of a spring or summer shower. But we want to make sure that you all are comfortably exploring while you're here. So keep that in mind and bring layers. I highly recommend it.
And I know when families are traveling, food is never far from your mind. So I did want to reassure families that we do have food here at Monticello. We have the Farm Table Cafe down at our visitor center, which has grab and go options like soup and salads and sandwiches. And then up here on the mountaintop, there's the farm shop, which has snacks. My personal favorite is the locally made ice cream that you can pick up there. It's a real treat. Another tip that you might want to keep in mind before traveling as a family is to bring your smartphone and to have it really well charged before you get here. You're going to want to take a lot of wonderful photos of your family to help capture the memories that you're making. And we also have some activities that we mentioned before, like our digital scavenger hunts for families and middle school students that you can use on your cell phone. And you can use it if you do that self-guided option to help guide your way through the house and learn a lot more, get a lot more out of your experience.
And then at the very beginning of your experience, whenever you come in to either go to the shuttles, or if you're stopping by the ticket office to purchase tickets when you get here, we highly recommend grabbing one of our maps and mapping out where the bathrooms are. And we do have them that are located on the mountaintop and at the visitor center. But we know that when you're traveling with a bunch of different people at varying ages, bathroom breaks, like some of the summer storms, tend to pop up at unexpected moments. So it's always a good idea to just take a quick glance at that, so you know in proximity to wherever you are while you're exploring here where the nearest restroom is. Now, Rachel, what about for our really young visitors who do come? Do we have any specific tips for things that families can do with the really, really young ones?
So if you're traveling with really young ones, don't miss our shuttle ride. That is such a hit with little kids. In fact, I have a story that I love to tell. I was riding the bus up with a young gentleman one time, and he started counting back from 10 and got to the 3, 2, 1, blast off. He's like, when do we go to the moon? And somebody had to break the news to him that was not that kind of a shuttle that we were on. But kids do tend to really get a kick out of the shuttle. Our youngest guests do. But besides that, spending time outdoors is a great opportunity here for really young children. And if you do, as you're planning your visit and trying to decide what ticket type you might want to buy, you might choose to do that Gardens and Grounds pass, or maybe our self-guided pass, which will allow you the most flexibility if you're traveling with a little one. If you decide that you want to try a guided tour, that's great. I would recommend that family-friendly tour again. And then just also, if you've got 2 adults with you, it does require about 40-45 minutes of being relatively quiet and relatively still. So if you know that your little one is a little bit more active, you might want to think about taking turns going through the house if you've got a couple of adults with you, and that can make the day a little bit more fun for everybody. But you know your kids best, so you can decide what will work best for your family.
And I know with any of our guides, even if we have really little ones that come on the tours, we've had some great guides who have had great moments of really having aha moments with children, because sometimes they bring the best questions. And it's surprising how many times the best questions come from the little ones who are on our tours, where everybody who's a part of that tour ends up learning something or realizing there's a whole other observation that none of them made that the one young person in the group was able to make. So I think some of the best stories from those experiences have come from the little ones who have been a part of those family-friendly tours and those intergenerational groups, because every person, every generation, every background is going to notice something different or really connect with something different. And in all of our tours, we always want our guides to connect to people's interests, their intellect, and their emotions, which is what makes these experiences so engaging for people of all ages. And Rachel, I'm glad that you also mentioned our scavenger hunt, because on top of having the family scavenger hunt, we did also recently develop a great one for middle school students, because we know that they're at that wonderful age where they still have all of these interests and want to have these conversations that are guided by somebody else, but they really are at a point where they're establishing their own ideas and observations and really have some in-depth thoughts about the complex narratives in spaces like this. So our scavenger hunt that's geared towards middle schoolers still does take you through those indoor and outdoor spaces, but allows for some of those free responses, as well as learning about some really interesting things that you may not get a chance to hear about on your guided tour, like some of the members of the enslaved community who would help in things like beer making here at Monticello, or have you think about what the legacies are that really stem from this place, and look at some of the stories and how people who were closely engaged as part of the enslaved community with Thomas Jefferson and his family living here at Monticello, and what does that mean that they were doing this labor to support these families when they also had to think about the fact that the family's word could drastically change their lives without them having any say or having complete autonomy over their own lives and their day-to-day operations. So for many of these students, this gives them a great opportunity to really capture some of those responses in key areas where they can explore on their own with the spaces, the sites, the recreated or structures that we've preserved throughout time and history. And they can really take a moment on their own and create their own perspectives and have their own response to these really complex narratives that they're really diving into. So thank you for reminding me of that we also had that for students, and highly recommend for any of our teachers who teach middle school to go online and take a look at that. And even though this isn't necessarily something that you will do your whole time on site, for all of the things that we've talked about today, we have great follow-up resources that are great for a multitude of generations, but especially for students, going online and taking a look through our videos, through the encyclopedia that's online, and reading up and reading even more about the families who lived here, both free and enslaved. This is a great connection point and great resources to utilize in your classroom, and great resources for students if they find something that they found really, really interesting and want a place to learn more. Our website has a lot of great multimedia tools for you to learn more about all of the things both in the past and how they connect and are very relevant to our present, because we still do have a lot of events and programs in the present that help merge how the history is impacting our day-to-day lives. And this also includes some of our upcoming events, isn't that right?
That's right.
What kind of things do we have coming up? I know we have Juneteenth that's coming up that I'm extremely excited about. For those of you who are planning to come and visit on site, our Juneteenth program has some really innovative parts of the interpretation. So if you're going to take a guided tour that day, there are some really cool things of bringing that history forward, even from talking about the enslaved community, from talking about Thomas Jefferson's ideas that he would write, and even in looking at things like the documentation of pieces like the garden and farm books. There's going to be a very unique way that we're able to engage in that conversation in a very modern and very relevant way if you plan to come for that weekend. And this is a huge and now national celebration. So there are going to be celebrations happening all over the place, and it's a great time to come and have these conversations here at Monticello. What else do we have that they'll be able to do during Juneteenth weekend here, Rachel? Our GDR.
Oh,
yes. So with the GDR and Juneteenth weekend, if you come visit us, you'll also have an opportunity to go into that space where families and our young students can engage and actually get into the role of some of the things that we do here as public historians, including looking at how our archaeologists will document the things that they found whenever they were doing research and sort of digging into the soil here at Monticello, looking at how oral historians record stories, also looking at some of the ideas in the Declaration in ways that are really accessible for our younger audiences, and then talking about the actual flattening of the Monticello Mountain and the building of Monticello, the vegetable garden, and the actual house itself, and all of the skill and all of the people that were a part of that process of physically building Monticello. So Juneteenth weekend, you'll be able in the middle of June to do a little bit of all of that. So we thank you all so much for taking this time with myself and with my colleague Rachel. We hope that if you have students, if you're an educator, whether you're a school educator, home educator, or families that have groups of all age ranges, please come and bring them out to Monticello this spring and summer. We have a lot of exciting things for you all to do. So thank you so much for joining us today, and we'll see you for our next live stream, same time, same place next week.